Oh, hi, everybody. My name is Matt Storrs, and welcome to Mattsplaining. On today's episode, I have an expert who I'm very excited to talk to. Expert, please introduce yourself and tell us what you're an expert on.
Hi, I'm David Piccolomini, and I'm an expert on the Dan Harmon Extended Universe.
Interesting. So my understanding of the Dan Harmon Extended Universe is that it has its basis in Channel 101 out in LA, where people would come and they would create videos and try and do their comedy skits. And they had Computer Man with Jack Black, was one of the first things that got on the internet, got a lot of attention. But ultimately, the Dan Harmon Extended Universe was created and directed to help facilitate people's understanding that Chevy Chase is a bad person. And that's how, stuff has happened since then with more success and everything like that. But that was ultimately the primary goal of, I'm going to get into creativity. I'm going to realize that I have all of these fun podcasts and these fun creative endeavors to reveal how bad of a person Chevy Chase is, where I'm going to get a whole group of people to chant about how much they hate Chevy Chase. I'm going to get fired from a show and then leave Chevy Chase around all of these people to just continue to be worse. And then create a kind of creative community that has a connection of okay, these people learned how to write from the show. Also, dynamics of teaching people in the creative community around there how to actually apologize when you do something wrong, which I think is really wonderful and fantastic. People, are very much into the Rick and Morty, oh, you don't understand this. And it's I don't think you understand it either. Only so many people are a rocket scientist and understand the concepts of what's happening on this show. And they consult with actual scientists, the writers do, and everything like that. And they try to make everything connect. But ultimately, everybody can understand the emotional resonance of having an abusive father figure, grandfather, what have you, and being in a codependent relationship, having to deal with things. You don't need to understand rocket science for that. Maybe go to therapy and understand how that has affected you. But a lot of those people that are really, really gung-ho on that show, they don't recognize how active Dan Harmon has been at addressing some of his mistakes in the past, how he's treated women in the workplace, how he's treated other people in the workplace, how he's dealt with his procrastination and learned how to communicate and apologize effectively and bring it into that space. And it's a lot of these people should go back and watch that, because that would be really, really helpful. But ultimately, I think that a subset of Dan Harmon's success and the extended universe as a whole is that okay, if somebody likes Community, oh, great. When did you like Community? Did you watch it when it was originally on? Oh, you like Rick and Morty? Okay. Why do you like Rick and Morty? Have you processed your trauma? Do you like the stuff from Channel 101? Okay, fantastic. Okay, and do you like the podcast? Okay, fantastic. That's very fun. Yeah.
I love using him as a litmus test, using the work as a litmus test of wait, why do you like it? And that's really way more important than...
Exactly, because you can like everything in his catalog. Everything has redeeming quality, is very good, but what you choose and what you latch onto tells a lot about what your personality is and the reasons why you like it. For instance, if somebody was to say to me, oh, I really like Community, but it really fell off when Chevy Chase left, I would be okay, so there's some concerns that I have with your decision making, because objectively, there were aspects of the show that did kind of change and adapt once Chevy Chase left. But it wasn't because Chevy Chase's character left. It's because there were changes to the structure and the funding and everything like that, as opposed to Chevy Chase leaving. Ultimately, I think that it's a very amazing creative dynamic that he has created, catalog that he has created. And I think that people should, I think that it gets a bad rap in some places, but ultimately I think that it is a wonderful litmus test to like if you meet somebody at a party and these are the things that they bring up, really being like, okay, why do you like that? And I think that that can help you save some time as to whether or not you should spend more time with people if they like things for the wrong reasons. So how much of that do you feel was accurate?
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't know if there was more to that.
There was okay. Yeah, there was nothing.
So what I'll say is, I would say a lot of that is accurate. A lot of that was opinion.
You know,
that like hypothesizing. So like accuracy be damned on whether or not.
Listen, opinion and accuracy. Who's to say?
That's literally what I was saying. Yeah. I was agreeing with you on that.
Okay. Oh, I see. Yes.
I was like, opinion and accuracy. Who's to say? And you were like, good point.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to talk about the fact that it's like Shakespearean in so many ways, but I don't want to bog it down of like, what Shakespearean play do you like?
I like the one where they eat people.
That's a good one.
It's a pretty good one. Yeah. That was the one where Shakespeare was like, "Oh, you want it to be crazy?
Yeah,
I'll make it crazy.
We can make this fun."
Yeah, Titus Andronicus. Okay, I can remember names. I just have to think about them later.
There you go.
Think about them for a minute while I try and come up with a name. Cool, good. I'm really good at this. Anyway, I'm an expert on this stuff. I've been a huge fan of Community. Community was like, I watched it. It came out on my birthday.
Oh, congrats. Godzilla came out on my birthday.
Well, not the first one.
Okay.
That would be way weirder
if
I was born in 2009.
Right.
But actually, it started before Channel 101. It started with Scud the Disposable Assassin, which was a graphic novel that he wrote with Rob Schraub, who was another person who was out in the general LA universe.
Okay.
It got them to LA where they started doing Channel 101 stuff, where then they met Jack Black. And they got He, Vision, and Jack made, which was a pilot with Jack Black and Owen Wilson. Ben Stiller was either in it or produced it or something. So it was like this thing and it just never got made. It's one of those pilots that people are like, this should have been a show, and then never got made into one. Then they leaned hard into Channel 101, which then became acceptable TV on MTV for a little bit. During also this time, they made the movie Monster House.
Okay.
Which was literally, they were like, I don't know, it's a house that eats people. And they were like, we will take a movie of it. And then they had to make that movie, which is a random movie I remember seeing as a teenager.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that before.
It's an animated movie where it's pretty good. It's a solid animated children's movie that probably had a lot of network notes attached to it.
Sure. I'm sure they got plenty of notes.
Yeah, and that's when then you get into Community, which then builds up. And Dan Harmon is one of the people that first kind of rose up in the cult of the showrunner.
Right, that makes sense.
In a way that we have like Vince Gilligan now and other people. Like Dan Harmon was very outspoken. Aaron Sorkin is a very good example. But he mostly made it, like a lot of his name was in movie, I think, right? Like Aaron Sorkin was more, I mean, he's been doing movie and TV pretty much the whole time.
Right, but there is a dynamic of Aaron Sorkin where it is like...
He became prominent in movies and then moved to TV, correct?
I wouldn't know, but I think that a lot of it is like very serious, like we're having, West Wing and that sort of thing.
And there is that drama of like, I have good opinions, so you should listen to me when I write television shows.
Exactly.
Which is something Dan Harmon's never tried to do, which is what makes the show like Community. Because Community starts off as a regular sitcom and then slowly just gets weirder and weirder and weirder as he starts learning where he can kind of break off and have fun with the format.
Exactly.
And so what's really interesting then when you follow that up is... Community's not popular. It's constantly fighting, and it's literally just the creative power of it that keeps it going. People like it, and it has a small but really devoted fan base.
Absolutely.
What's really interesting about it, though, and this is more of what I wanted to talk about, and I don't know how much time I have left.
You have plenty of time.
Is that the expansion from that, like if you look at all the stuff, like the Marvel Cinematic Universe does not exist without a lot of Dan Harmon influence.
Interesting.
The Russo brothers, which are the people responsible for, taking it to the next level, got all of their basis in Arrested Development and Community, producing those shows. They were heavily involved in the first 3 seasons. And you can see it in the way that Captain America 2, considered one of the best films of the whole, thing, is funnier. It's way more, it's punchier than the other ones. And you can see a lot of that sitcom training. Spider-Man is done by Chris McKenna, who was considered like the right-hand man of Dan Harmon throughout all of Community. And you can see that influence go in there too. Like there's a lot of places, Megan Gans, who was influenced a lot, who he did the apology thing, which is funny because obviously that's something that you would have at
Right.
the ready as something. You'd be like, oh, there's a person who did forgiveness correctly, which is a good thing to know. Yeah, he did handle that apology. Look, it's really one of those things when people talk about the Louis C.K. apology, like he apologizes, like read Dan Harmon's apology and read Louis C.K.'s apology.
It's completely.
And you see the difference in someone who feels remorse for their actions and someone who's constantly repeated them still to this day. Right. Anyway, that's the problem. Anyway, well, A Few Good Men was way earlier. So A Few Good Men and The American President, and then it's Sports Night and West Wing. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so so it's
that's
really,
for Aaron Sorkin, not Louis C.K. Okay.
Yeah, Louis C.K. actually made A Few Good Men.
A lot of people think it's just Pootie Tang, but it is A Few Good Men.
I can't. My brain can't put together the combination of Pootie Tang and A Few Good Men.
Yeah, they're basically the same level, as I understand.
I mean, you want the Wadata, you can't handle the Wadata. That's about what I got to.
Yep, it works for me.
And so then you get into Rick and Morty, which is that thing where people, Rick and Morty is a great example of it's like Dave Matthews Band. Like overall, you're like, it's harmless, but the people really into it, a lot of them, you're like, oh, that's a lot. You can't be like this around in public.
Right. Yeah. You were very obsessed. You were taking the wrong message from the show.
Yes. Oh, you don't see Rick as a bad person?
Right.
I think his story circle and stuff is something that a lot of people will use to create arcs around television shows for a long time.
Absolutely. And I mean, it does seem like he has a mentality and an understanding of narrative structure that is fascinating. Just like absolutely, like it's just like ingrained second nature. Like this is how these should work, and this is how this can connect to this thing later on. Basically being the script supervisor that has control, if that makes sense. Where it's like, oh, I'm completely immersed in this creative endeavor and I know how it should continue to go along.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing that I do relate to a certain degree of it's like, oh, if I'm in control of this, it has to go this way because it has to be right in a certain way.
Absolutely.
And I guess part of that is learning how to let go of that control to a certain point, or else it will drive you insane.
Absolutely.
And as much as this has been like a jerk-off piece, like he's had a million creative troubles and everything.
Oh, yeah.
And incredibly difficult to work with. And yeah, Chevy, the only reason I would say it wasn't his mission to bring to light that Chevy Chase is an asshole is because Chevy Chase has been an asshole the entire time, pretty publicly.
Well, and that's the thing, but making it more publicly known that Chevy Chase is a bad person. Like Chevy Chase ultimately is like a Hulk Hogan. The more you know about Chevy Chase, the worse of a person you realize that he is. Just like Hulk Hogan, the more you know about Hulk Hogan, the worse you realize that he is.
Yeah, because at first you're like, oh, he's just like a guy trying his best. Like,
yeah, he's a charismatic
he's
guy.
Out of touch.
Yeah.
It's kind of fucked up, but then all of a sudden you're like, no. This is so much worse. This is a lot worse than I thought it was.
Because he got fired for dragging Chevy Chase, among other things, and being difficult.
No, that was just the easiest way to add it.
Oh, I see.
It was really that he had terrible production habits and would like take things to the last possible second.
Oh, I see.
Getting them done. It was a horrific production schedule. You'd work 12 to 18 hours.
Oh, that's not good.
No, it was insane. Like as much as I'm saying this, and what I really do like about Dan though, it's like is something that I've taken away from it is a commitment to growth. And I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe like, that's just something he puts out publicly, but it seems like watching him as a person is like he's determined to become a better person.
Right.
Still probably an asshole. Still probably not a great person in a lot of ways or whatever. But like a commitment to growth and a commitment to being a better person is something that I think is really admirable. And the only place you can really, I think we as a society should go, because otherwise you just expect people to be perfect and they will always disappoint you.
Right. And I think that that's a beautiful, beautiful thing of recognizing, hey, I have flaws. I have areas that I can improve upon, and recognizing and admitting to those failures, recognizing and admitting to those areas for growth, and then truly working on those things and trying to be a better person. You just don't see that as often as you would like.
No, I mean, it's honestly, it's kind of funny as someone who like part of my like family crest would be, we'd rather be right than likable. I found that if you're wrong on something, the quickest way to be right on it is to learn that you're wrong, admit that you're wrong, and like move on to a correct opinion.
Absolutely.
And it's really funny. It's like, and not to say that you're always going to be wrong in like healthy debate and everything, but it's like the less you fear about being wrong, the happier you'll be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If people wanted to learn more about Dan Harmon's Extended Universe or more about you, where would you recommend they look?
So the Harmontown podcast is a thing that exists. That was also a huge thing of him becoming a prominent showrunner thing. Was like he started this podcast that while he was running the show, and then he got fired from the show, and then he went on tour with that.
Oh, fantastic.
So there's also a movie about that, which is a good, fairly balanced portrayal of a thing that's about someone. And then also my podcast, You Should Watch This.
Oh, fantastic. I've heard very good things about that.
Yeah, you've been a guest on it, and not Matt's episode particularly that talks about Dan Harmon, but it's a whole podcast about television. So I've definitely brought him up a million times, I'm sure.
That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. My name is Matt Storrs, and this has been Mattsplaining.